Our next speaker today is the author of Iron Router, Chris Mather. Iron Router is the most downloaded package on Atmosphere. How many downloads does it have?
20,000.
Yeah. So yeah, Iron Router, by far the most popular package on Atmosphere. And today he's going to be, and he is also the author of Invented Mind, which is a video course series on Meteor. And today he's going to be telling you about Iron Router and the Meteor package ecosystem. Chris.
OK, is this working? I tend to be a little loud, so if it starts to squeak, if you could turn it down. So prepare yourselves. Hello. It's good to be back. It's been a couple months. It's been like 8 months, I think. So good to see everyone. And I put this up. I actually don't plan on using it, so you can get a little sneak preview of the Invented Mind publishing platform here. And at the end, I will release our class for the month. So that's the grand finale for the talk. But actually, I'm just going to be a little informal, if you don't mind, and sort of come out here. And actually, you've been duped a little, because I'm not going to talk about Iron Router too much. I'm actually just going to talk about the process of building Iron Router and what that was like and some of the things that I learned. And then I actually don't know how long this is going to take. And so if it happens to be less than 20 minutes, we can just do Q&A. And I'm OK with that. So how many people watch Invented Mind just so kind of know like the friendliness of the audience, hopefully? Well, that's good. I hope you like the videos. Yeah, so usually I do technical talks, but there's like 120 of those online. You can go and watch them. And I guess to kind of start this off, where did Iron Router kind of start? I guess the confession that I have to make is that I'm sort of a dummy. So it's kind of weird that I created this. And I actually kind of hate it when people say that, because it sounds very coy, right? You're kind of like, well, obviously that's not true. You created the Iron Router. But it is kind of true, actually. So I think that there was sort of naivety about how this thing started, and I certainly didn't go to routing school. There was like no place to really go and learn about how to build a router. I'd used Rails, so there was a comparable. There was something I could look at and say, well, I sort of see how this worked as a user of this system. But I thought this is something I'd like to do. I think it'd be interesting. And also, we don't have a way to do this in our applications. And it seems to be on the core roadmap, but it's not happening. So maybe I'll just try it. And so what did I do? If there's no routing school, what you do next is you copy from someone else. And so that's actually what I did. And if you go and you look at some of the core teammates that are part of Meteor Development Group, they write code and it's open source. And so you can actually just go look at it. And you can look at the branches, and you can see what some of the stuff that they do, which is just remarkable and unbelievable. And I remember I saw a branch there that the CEO of the company, of all people, had written that was just the beginnings of a router. And you could tell he worked on it for a brilliant couple of hours. And he stopped, and he went on to something else. So I said, oh, this is neat. And I can learn from this. And I can think about what was in his mind as he was going through this process. So I took that. And I think from there's actually quite a few kind of mental gymnastics to go through to think about all the different parts that go into something like this, right? How do you reactively respond to a URL change? And how do you go about finding the right route? Well, you have to compile the URL somehow. So then what about rendering templates and layouts dynamically? And how can we do that? And what's the right way to do it? So all of those kinds of gymnastics I just kind of went through. So copying, I think, is OK. I felt a little guilty about it, I guess, at first. But I think that was the process. The process was to take that and then to learn from it, and to really go through those mental gymnastics and fill up a couple of these notebooks with ideas and thoughts. But then it sort of evolved into something else. And so the first routing package was actually called Mini Pages, the one that I wrote, which 25 people or 30 people used, I think. And then there was Tom's router, which is the one that everybody used. And I don't think there was as many people back then as there are now. So I thought, well, it's probably a good idea to get someone like Tom and work with him so that we can kind of evolve this together. And that ended up being probably a pretty smart thing to do, because now we think through the issues together. And we think through what does the stack look like with depth computations? And it's something that took a surprising number of iterations of Iron Router to really figure out. So, and I think from there now it's become a process where we've evolved it as a result of community feedback and learning the system as we go. And as we get into the bits and bytes of things, you realize there's all of these opportunities to contribute. I mean, there's so much work to do. I mean, it's impossible that the core team can accomplish it all. It's impossible that Tom and I can accomplish everything that needs to be done with the router. So one of the first things that people ask when they say to me, I get emails and they'll say, I want to contribute, but I just don't know what to do. And those people I really like to get emails from. Those are the people that say, I want to do something, I just don't know what the hell I'm doing. And then I think, yeah, I know, me too, and then I'm on to the next task. And then maybe I respond, sometimes I don't. I try though. But then there's another camp of people, I think, that feel as if, we just get conditioned to kind of need permission to look under the hood at things, And there's so many demands on our life, right? You have work and you have real things going on. And you don't have time to go through source code of all these different projects. And which one would you even look at? So I think one of the cool things about Meteor is that it's just such a maturing project, and there's just so much good stuff there that it actually is a good use of time if you want to learn more about how things work, to spend your time in this area. But we kind of have gotten conditioned to needing permission, right? You need permission to look at source code. You need a real project. You need a use case. And just being curious is sort of silly. That's like frivolous almost. And I just think that's just utter nonsense. So I think that we ought to feel OK with looking at source and studying because it will help us find a better job or a job in the first place. But we should also feel good learning and looking at it because it's just fun. And it makes us better at what we do. And it's a fun use of time. So I think, let me look here. I think that we should get rid of that idea of needing permission. And we should copy and steal and improve and figure out what needs to be done that way and get into the weeds with it. So what else do we have here? I think the result of that, to just kind of conclude, is that once you allow yourself to do that, once you allow yourself, my advice to you is, where do I start? And where you start is by studying a little bit. Look at how the Iron Router actually works and allow yourself to have an hour or 2 hours to go through the dispatch process, or to just sort of figure it out. And why not? I mean, you don't need a reason, just do it. Or to go in and take a look at what the Mongo driver does. I mean, you have the code right there. It's amazing. It's an amazing learning opportunity. Or if you wanted to just go in and see how packages work, you can just go right in and study it. And so that's the place to start. The place to start, I think, is not what needs to be done immediately. The place to start is to get in and study how things work. And then the ideas will evolve and emerge naturally. And that's when I think you'll get to the point where you have conflict now with the core team. And that's because now you're like, oh, I see what needs to be done. Now do it, someone. Or I'll do it. And then they say, well, we're busy. We don't have time to review your code. We're doing our own code. So I think the last part of this is, well, what is the role of the community versus the role of the core team? And where do packages come into play? Here's my thought on it. It's pretty simple. I think we build as much as we can, even if it overlaps with things that are happening in the core. I think that what we need to do is to study and be the best educated, the best contributing community that we can possibly be. And if there's a little bit of overlap, there's a little bit of overlap. And we figure out what the best ways to do things are, and we contribute that back to the core team. I think what's happening with the core team is that they're working on so much, and they're working on making this tiny core so robust. That we as a community will have to sort of work amongst ourselves, I think, on things that are needed. And how that exactly works will kind of emerge over time. We're figuring it out. I think one of the things is just figuring out as a community how we interact and how we contribute in the first place. I don't know, how many people have actually submitted a PR, just out of curiosity? That's a really scary process, isn't it? I mean, you probably have done it so many times now. It's all, you don't count. You've been over to my house, for crying out loud. How many people is your first PR this year? Yeah, well, congratulations, man. Well, you know, PR process is really scary. You know, first of all, you have to figure out how to clone a repo. And I think you just press the fork button, but then you get the thing locally, and I guess you're supposed to create a separate branch, and you got to figure out what to name it. So that's like 10 minutes of cognitive overhead. And then after you name the branch, it's like, what do you even do? So you don't want to do anything serious because you might make a mistake. So you just contribute to something, well, I'm about to throw something under the bus. I won't do that. You pick something small, and you just do that, and then you have to submit the PR. And then that's actually, I have to figure out how to do it every time. I cannot remember, because most of the time people are submitting PRs to me. So when I submit one, I have to go there, and there's a whole workflow to do on GitHub. And then you go, and you feel like when you press that button, it's like applying to a school or something. It's like the best school in the world when you just commit a documentation update or something. And it's like, you hit submit, and then nobody does anything for like a week. You just don't hear back. And then someone responds, and they go, hey, man, you submitted this to the wrong branch. You're supposed to submit it to the development branch. That's how we work. And so that's kind of like a really annoying, kind of frustrating process. And it's even more so when you don't know who the people are, who are on the other end. But you go through that process. Force yourselves to do it. It's OK. Just make mistakes. So as someone who's on that side, just figuring it out myself, I can tell you, believe me, if I'm ignoring something, or if I send back some feedback or something, it's fine. Just contribute. So anyway, I think those are my stream of conscious thoughts. Let me talk about Evented Mind quickly, and then I'll just open it up to early Q&A, and we could talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. So Evented Mind changed into a business, so I have some motive, I guess. Although I started teaching because I like to teach, and I like to learn this stuff as well. But there are classes on this. Here's my, I guess, thought. If you're going through source code and you're studying and you have questions and you need help with that, just send me an email, and I'll always answer those questions. So my goal is to get people to another level. So if I had to sort of state a goal for the Meteor community, it would be, let's be the most educated community we can be. Why? Because as individuals, it makes it more fun to be able to contribute at a higher level. And as a community, we'll just get better stuff. So if you're a visual learner and you like watching people sort of go through, if you like, that doesn't sound right. If you like watching people code, then these classes might be for you. But I'm never going to hold back information. I'm never going to say, here's the package, and now pay me if you want to learn more about it. You can always email, and I'll answer questions about it. But with that said, I've actually created a new class. The business model is in flux. I started with a subscription, monthly subscription. It's $29 a month. And this month, it'll be $19 if you use a discount code. Well, you'll have to email me, and we'll work something out. The discount code is participate. Can you remember that? Participate. And that'll be $10, and so you can try it out. I'm going to actually just open this up, and hopefully it works. So now it is public. Yeah. If you're completely new to Meteor, there's some classes here to help you get started. And now there's inside Iron Router, which will take you through some of the internals and help you to better contribute. Now, one of the things we didn't do, we didn't have time to finish it this week in production, but next week I will wrap it up and put them up for free. So into the feed, which is right over here, which is what you've been used to if you've been following along from the beginning. There's going to be a couple videos in here next week about contributing and about how to do all these things like submit a pull request and how Tom and I actually, I mean, you should see some of the emails we go back and forth on with designs and stuff. You'd probably laugh and then submit more PRs. But I'll walk you through and show you that. And we can maybe use that as a starting point for how we can work a little bit more closely together on projects like Iron Router and some more sophisticated components down the road. Now, I talk about Iron Router because it's something that I work on, but there's lots of packages out there that are pretty sophisticated and pretty cool. Collection hooks is another example. So I need to get better at publicizing some of those as well. So that's my other message to you. I will look around much more in the future at things that people are working on. All right, I will shut up. take a look at this if you're interested. We've got 6 minutes plus 5 to do Q&A if anyone has it.
I love what you said about just digging into source code and like not feeling ashamed or scared of getting into it.
Sure.
What can maintainers of projects do to make it easier for people to feel uncomfortable with that? Like when you were just, you maintain Iron Router, like what are examples of ideas to make it really easy to dig into?
Right, so the question was, what can a maintainer do? A maintainer being someone who runs the project or has pull and push rights and stuff, do to make it easier? Is that fair? Easier for people to contribute, more feel comfortable? I think it's actually a pretty complicated question. And I think one way to start answering it is to think about what is the goal of the project or of the maintainer. And I think my goal is a little bit different than the goals of the core team, for example. So I think the core team's goals, in the sense of the framework, is to create the most robust, the most secure, the most performant, tiny core that they possibly can. So I would expect that working with and I think that's sort of their development goal, right? The community goal is to create an environment that's friendly and open and welcoming, and that isn't just full of the bad kinds of things that we can see develop in communities. And I think they've done an astounding job at that. But they're going to probably be less inclined to work very closely with doing code reviews and pulling in code and stuff like that. Now, I know the core team to be very nice, good people, and they're also very smart. And so occasionally they'll take a teaching moment, and they will do that if they can, but it's not the primary. I think in packages, on the other hand, I think you create a package, put it out, just do it. Like, oh, I missed a few tests, okay. Just get it out, and we do our best. And of course, with Iron Router, it's getting pretty robust. But in the early times, we just kind of kept iterating on it and putting it out. And so what I can do, I guess, is I'm going to try my best to respond to people is one thing. So if you ever ask a question, as stupid as you think it might be, it's not probably, and it's probably going to be pretty helpful to people. It took me a month and a half to figure out what yield meant. And I apparently invented it, but I told you that's a lie. I did not invent it. Someone else did, and I just took it. And likewise for depths. That was just, it's such an easy concept now, but it took so long to kind of internalize it. So I think what you should do is just not have this cognitive overhead as a person who's figuring out how to, I think you should just do. But what's going to happen is sometimes you'll post something or you'll say something, and you'll get a response that is not what you expected, right? So sometimes now, as people are starting to participate, I'm realizing I give critical feedback. As I don't like this about this, but I try to say, I do like this, I don't like this, now let's talk about it. So if you have a soft stomach for going back and forth, that's maybe not what you want to do. Questions, always put them up, and we'll do our best to answer them. We might at some point move to Stack Overflow or some other medium, but. And then I think we need to keep the environment respectful. And so there are times when if someone is creating a strange kind of pathology in the community, we will try to stomp that out so that it's friendly and people feel welcome and able to contribute. Is that a fair? Go ahead.
What's the process? First, obviously, you search on Stack Overflow and see if there's an obvious answer to your question.
Oh, if you have an actual question, like on, not about source code, but like about your use case?
Whether something's a bug or not, or how it should be implemented. Then you go to the Google group.
Okay, so the question was, what's the process, right?
And finally, you go to GitHub and actually
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like a lot of work.
I'll just call you.
Don't call me. You can call me if you want. Let me tell you what it looks like from my perspective. So one of the things you have to realize is there's a lot of issues, right? Like if you go and submit an issue, I mean, it's one of sort of many things. So I think one of the biggest things you can do versus like trying to get it perfect and whatever is more actually try to get really to the most amount of information you can get about the issue and get it isolated as much as possible. So one of the things that we do is, it almost seems ridiculous. I've gotten to the point where I feel bad saying this. Like, can you do a minimally reproductive, what do I even call it? It's just like minimally reproducible example. And it's like, come on, man. I put the source code right there in the question. Why do I need to do that? Well, the reason is because there's just so much cognitive overhead when you're going through a million of these issues, to just go and say, OK, now let me process. It's like you got to spawn up the runtime and kind of go through it and hope, you know. What's much easier is to say, git clone this thing, run it, pull up the JavaScript console, and debug it just like you would do it. So what makes that significantly easier is if it's just 15 lines of focused code, right? If you have 15 packages installed and you know, there's Iron Router and this and that, and someone the other day, I don't blame you if you're watching. It's fine. I've done it myself. You know, I think I sent my whole app to Meteor once or twice. And I'm like, I'm just dying. Please fix this. And they you know, are nice enough. But we can't debug the app, right? We don't have time. So my goal, I think, you know, you do a quick search. But if you can't figure it out, try to just kind of reduce it to the, and one more thing, I would say, in your description, written language is so important, right? If you just say, this is what I'm seeing, this is the data that I have, or the symptoms, and here's what I would expect to happen. Just a simple thing like that makes it much easier. Yeah. And if you do that, by the way, you'll notice like I might be in bed. And I'm lying there in bed with my phone. And if I see something like, oh, it's this, and I just respond. But if I see something that's very complicated, I go, ah. And then tomorrow I look at it maybe, and then someone looks at it. Eventually we try to get through it. But anyway, I wanted to give you kind of an idea of my, does that help at all? OK, good. Oh, well, didn't you just send it, right? Yeah, it's like 3 days. That's it.
How important was the open source community when switching from Spark to Blaze, or is that why you want more people to participate?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
I guess, was transitioning from Spark to Blaze like a big issue for Iron Router?
Was it a big issue? It was a big process.
Yeah, so did the open source community help out with that, or is it because of that process? That'd be a tall ask. So the question was, did the open source community help with the transition from, I can't even remember the acronyms now, from Spark to Shark to Blaze? Well, Tom certainly helped. And there was a smaller community of people who had been kind of part of that process all along, who were kind of working off of the Blaze branch and all of that, who were there helping out for sure. I mean, you know, when you say, was it complicated? I mean, we wanted, so one of the things is I enjoy learning and teaching. That's why I do Evented Mine. And so for me, as soon as they start working on something, I'm almost on it right away, probably to their annoyment. So it was not an unexpected process, right? We just kind of, there were a few kind of hairy moments at the end where we worked closely with the core team to resolve it. I think to your point about, is that why we want more contribution? I want more contribution, one, because, I mean, raising my level of skill has been a life kind of rewarding experience for me, and certainly something that is intertwined with my business. But I can't imagine that you can't see a path to where it would help you in your own job as well. So I think with those things, I want to have you do that as well, partly selfishly because it makes my life better in many ways, but also because I think it can make yours better. Does it help me directly? Like if we have 40 more people on Iron Router, is it going to help? I don't know. Maybe it could be worse. I don't know yet. But I feel like it's better to have, you know, more contributors than less in general. I speak stream of conscious sometimes. With the videos, it seems like I have my act together, you know, but they're really produced. All right, Bob?
Yeah, Chris, can you talk a little bit about your scaffolding tool? I found it immensely helpful.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure how many people here are aware of it for building out from scratch.
Sure, sure. So Bob asked about the M command line tool. Do you guys use that at all? Is it getting at all any traction? OK. So M is, it's Meteor M. You do npm install, and it's Meteor-EM. And it's a command line tool. Why is it a command line tool? Because at the moment, we just aren't able to plug the Meteor command line tool with additional functionality. So hopefully that will come at some point, and then we can just figure out the right way to merge it or do whatever. But the reason I built it was because I just kept creating the same files over and over again, and creating the same boilerplate code. So here was an example of, I really actually dug into the Meteor command line tool to figure out how it worked and what it was missing. And said, OK, I know there's open source tools out there that do some of this, but I really needed to do this. And so I think, you know, it makes my life easier. I think there's a lot of functionality that could be added to it. But I built it because it was a fun project and it was something that I needed. I think there's a lot of cool things that could be done with it, by the way, if people are willing to contribute, but it's going to take raising your level of understanding of what's happening, which you could do in an afternoon. But for example, I'd love to be able to plug the M tool with packages, right? I'd love to be able to say packet, add Meteor, add some scaffold that you want to use, and then do M create, and it just uses that because it's in your package folder. That would be pretty cool. And so I have a whole list of those kinds of ideas. That's actually a pretty nascent project. So if you wanted to go onto GitHub and just start creating ideas, we created a milestone called Ideas in R&D or something like that. So we can go and create a whole list and get to work on it. Stream of conscious response. Did you have a follow-up question? Or?
No, it's been very helpful to me.
So that's a great example of somewhere where just build that, right? If you see something, send me an email, say this is what I'm thinking about doing. And probably my response will be go do it, try it out, or I'll point you to something that I know exists already. But even then, I'd say just copy it and try to make it a little better. Something as sophisticated as Iron Router or something like that, I would say, well, don't copy it to learn how it works, but then come back and contribute to it. It'll just be better for the community that way. So I'd say copy to learn how it works, but then contribute to the project that has some momentum, right? Other questions? 19 seconds. OK.
So a core dev of an open source project who has been working on it for a long while is probably mildly into it, has very strong opinions about it. But an outsider who sends a PR might have a more intuitive idea on how to do things. I'm often that outsider. How do I persuade the core dev that things I request, which are often requested by others, might make sense, even though in their vision of the project, they might conflict with how they think of the structure or something?
I think convincing is an interesting question. I haven't been very good at convincing, to be honest with you, about different things. And I understand what you're saying. There's a certain intuition from having worked on things that you get, and you want to sort of convey that intuition and help make the thing better. I think the way to do that is to write packages and contribute and to show. So as a community, we work together to work on things. And if we get loud enough on a particular issue, it becomes a little difficult to ignore. But I think that way, the ideas that really deserve to bubble up eventually bubble up. And I think the ones that are just sort of out there, which is fine, but eventually kind of maybe easier said than done. It's still pretty early. Iron Router, for example, there's a smiley, frowny face. I think I'm supposed to stop. On Iron Router, I would just to complain, say I don't know, I don't have the perfect reproduction, but I think this should work this way, and we read that, and we'll try our best. But the Meteor core team has a much harder job, in a way. So convincing, I think the way that we convince is we work harder on our own stuff and work as teams and sort of figure out how to do it that way. And then they'll observe over time and the things that deserve to make it back will, I think. OK, thank you for your time.